And we are live.
What?
Hey Amir and Tony, we're talking today for a home inspection. We are with Tony from LRS Home Services. Welcome, Tony.
Oh, thank you so much. Glad to be here.
And today really is talking about the home inspection and the process. What is important for buyers to get on home inspection? What is important for sellers to get on home inspection? And let's get started, right?
Sure, let's do
Yeah.
it.
Let's do it.
So one of the main question is, what are the most common issue we can find in a home inspection?
You know, during a home inspection, I'm inspecting thousands of things. It doesn't seem like that, but as I'm going through, I'm seeing so much. And to say what's most common, I see a lot of bad seals on the windows. I'd say that's probably one of the most common as far as something that the buyer would be concerned about. So it's a hermetic seal, the dual pane windows. It's an airtight seal in between. And if that seal gets compromised, you'll start getting moisture up inside the window. You start seeing that staining in there, stuff you just can't wipe off. It looks like a dirty shower door sometimes. And that can nullify the seal, obviously, the insulation factor on the window. Visually, it doesn't look good, especially if it's in a window that's facing out front or out back. You don't want to see all this cloudiness in between. So that would be one issue. There's just so many. There's so many.
So, but how do you determine if the AC has a problem, for example? Well, what is the criteria for you to say, hey, the AC need to be serviced or not?
So the home inspection is a general inspection. So we're not doing, we're not opening it up and looking inside and hooking up equipment to it. Basically, we're running it, checking the supply air and the return air. There should be a split. They look for about 20-degree difference between the supply and the return. So we look for that with our thermostat, our thermometer. And also we do a visual inspection of the unit itself. I just did an inspection with Amir the other day, and we knew there was some things wrong with the AC. We couldn't quite figure out what it was. I knew something was wrong just by how it was performing. And then as we went outside, we noticed there was a big puddle of oil that I didn't see in the initial inspection because I hadn't been running the unit. But after we were running it, it appeared that the coolant was leaking out of the unit itself. So visual inspection is important, and then just operating the system and anything like that would,
Well, let's talk about the importance of inspection. I mean, whoever is buying the house is probably the most expensive asset in your life you will ever buy, unless you're buying private jets, right? So people buying a 300, 400, 500, 800,000 house, so it's a lot of money. So I mean, you're not gonna buy a car without inspecting the car, right? So, and the same with the house. So, it's just peace of mind, right? So,
absolutely.
And what kind of different inspections are there? I mean, obviously, this whole house.
Right, the whole house general inspection, of course. The pest inspections, those are really important too. They can turn up a lot of information, and the cost to do those repairs can add up very quickly. So the pest inspection, I'd say, would be the other most important inspection. But you could do radon testing if you would like to get. There's roof inspections, foundation inspections. I do a lot of that myself, but remember, I'm just doing a general inspection. Where, say, it was a tile roof, I'm just going to do a visual inspection of the roof, get into the attic looking for leaks. A roof inspector is going to rip pulling tiles off, looking underneath, checking the flashing. So it's a little more in depth when you have a specialized contractor come out, but it's not always necessary. And most of the time, if there's something that they're going to find, I'm going to see evidence of what that is during my general inspection.
So that's important to know. So different kind of inspections. Tony is doing general home inspection, so inspecting all the main systems of the house, plumbing, water heater, AC. The expensive stuff, structurally, visual inspection of the roof and foundation. I mean, if it's foundation visible inspection, you put in your report, and then the next further inspection is needed. Pest inspection, like you said, in my mind, is also very important, probably the most important as well, because you wanted to know if the house has a termites, because termites can eat the house inside out, right? Mm-hmm. And then at dry rot damage, etc. So termites, unfortunately, I cannot fix, you cannot fix, we need to have the special,
Another one I've been doing quite a bit, especially for older home, is the sewer inspection.
Yeah.
Having a
So-
camera down the line, just inspecting everything if there's
Right.
no root intrusion or like any displacements between the two piping, that could cost a lot of money too.
Oh yes.
Yeah, that's
that's-
a very big item inspection too. And then like you said, roof is typically free or very inexpensive inspection, also important. And we don't do too many radon inspections, especially unless it's in El Dorado Hills and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And then if the house has a well and septic, of course, you need to well and septic
yes.
inspections. Right.
Sure. Well, that's right.
Yeah.
So what is the process typically? How long does it take usually to do a home inspection? To do something like maybe a general home inspection, how long does it take to do it?
Typically, a couple of hours, depending on the size of the house, of course. So the bigger the house, the longer it's going to take. The older the house, if it's a raised foundation, but you're really around about 2 hours to do the inspection.
2 or 3 hours.
Yep.
And do you have the homeowner present? Do you have the buyer present usually? What is the...
It could be either or. During the pandemic, there was nobody. I showed up by myself. But ideally, you would like the agent there and the buyers to be there. Not so much the sellers. They'll get the information later. If you have the sellers there and I'm trying to talk about things and they're telling me that, that was done last summer, and it just becomes a distraction. So ideally, you'd want the buyer and the buyer's agent to be there. And you walk them through. And not only am I showing them things that I found that were wrong, I'm also pointing out the main water shut off, the fuel shut off, the electrical panel, pointing out maintenance issues, just things, clogged gutters or just grading, just things that they should know. Keeping the landscaping away from the walls, things like that.
Just to clarify, you don't want the buyer to be doing the whole inspection.
No,
So,
sir. No,
yeah.
no. Not during
So-
the whole inspection, because that is a distraction. Unless
Yeah.
they want to come and measure and do things, but not to follow me around. I just had that happen yesterday. It was actually the seller who wanted to follow me around, and I had to tell him, I can't have you do that. It's distracting to me, and I need to be able to focus on what I'm doing. So, and the buyers want me to focus too, right? They don't want me to be distracted.
So ideally what we do, so we come towards the end of inspection. So Tony says, let's say he's finishing by 12 o'clock, and then I'll get the buyers there at 12, and then you can show all the findings. And it's preferable to me too, so then buyers can see the findings, because sometimes when they read a report without seeing the findings, then they can freak out, or misunderstand, needs
Of course.
much more than.
Yeah, it's good to have the agents, the buyers, and the inspector just reviewing all the findings, and then
In
at the
person,
end
yeah.
being like in
Yeah.
person, and because when you get the reports a day later, you forget what you saw, and then just having the talk with the actual
And there's things
inspectors.
too that
Exactly.
on the report might be interpreted as something really, which it could be bad. It'd be improper wiring in a main electrical panel could start an electrical fire. But if it's as simple as changing the breaker out, I could say that to them during the walkthrough. I can't put that on the report though. So all they see is they have a wiring issue. They don't realize how simple it would be to fix it. Through the walkthrough, I can explain those things to them.
So what would be the benefit for buyers? Why spending $500 for the inspection for a house you don't own, and then what would be the benefit for it?
Well, you're going to spend $500, let's say hypothetical. So if I find 2 or 3 things, you've got, if they're negotiating and they're going to be getting some repairs done, that money's given back almost immediately. And there's so many health and safety issues. You have a bad exhaust on a water heater. That's carbon monoxide poisoning. So, and it's such easy find that I can see that, and it's such an easy fix. But without the home inspection, you wouldn't know. Sometimes there's things that are happening, little leaks that you don't know that are, I see a little tiny stain. I did find a stain in a closet once. I pointed it out to the agent, and they ended up getting a pest inspector in there. The entire wall was full of mold. It had been leaking for years, but all it was this little tiny stain. So those are the kind of things that that I would point out that could potentially really save them a lot of money and make the house much safer.
Well, one prime example, last inspection what we did, so there was, buyer didn't want really to do inspection there in construction and sell side advice to get a pest, home inspection and pest inspection. And then, in the end, we negotiated $15,000 for credit.
Yes.
$15,000, right?
Yeah. What was wrong with the property?
Well, there was broken seals in the windows. There was small tiny crack in a master bathroom tub, right? So, but because of cracking on that whole tub, it's not it's
Usable, yeah.
yeah, it's not usable. And then the AC was not working properly, and then Tony found a leak on the freon or whatever that was leaking.
Yep.
And then I was pest some dryer damage. So based on these 4 items, we got 15,000.
Yeah, it can add up quite a bit, right?
Not bad for investment of less than $500 for inspection.
So if we stay on a topic for the foundation, for example, there's a big items, big scary items. Is pretty much the half of the house, and especially the foundation. How can you tell? If you can tell, how can you tell if you have a foundation problem?
Well, visually looking at the foundation, obviously large cracks. That's the simplest way. But inside the house, you'll have, as the house starts to move, windows will become difficult to open and close. I mean, if you had one window that wasn't opening and closing, that doesn't mean it's a foundation issue. But when you have multiple windows that aren't working right, doors that aren't closing smoothly, you do see cracks, especially if they're located on a central area of the house. Those would be definite signs that there's potentially a foundation issue going on in the house. Yep.
So how would you mark it in your report? What would you say?
If I just saw a few windows jammed up, I would just call those. But if I did know, if I had a feeling that this was something bigger, then I would combine all of what I have found into one comment and recommend that they would have a foundation expert come and take a look at the house.
So it could be pillars, misaligned. So if you go into a crawl space, for example, you can see area
Yes.
would be one
Yes.
causing issues.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you know, foundation. You're building a house from foundation. The foundation has to be strongest.
That's right.
And then a shell and a roof, so everything else inside is protected.
You know, Ron, it's mostly though it's covered, right? You can't see most of it unless it's a crawl space. But if it's the whole house is sitting on top of the foundation, so you have to base it on the things you're seeing up on there too. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
What red flags you buyers should be concerned about? Big like items. Be like, okay, you shouldn't buy this house, or you shouldn't.
well, foundation would be the primary if that was the case. If I saw a house, I would say some of the main red flags would be if you noticed that the seller was covering some things up. That's something. If you notice there's throw rugs, you pull the throw rugs, you see a bunch of cracked tiles, then you know they're hiding things. If they're painting over dry rot, those are things that I would be. You can see non-professional work, electrical work. You see, you know when an electrician's been in there, it's all done professionally. It's all in conduit and it's protected properly. No exposed splices. When you start seeing a multiple of that I would say would be a red flag. But hiding things, because then you don't know what else they're hiding, and you want to make sure that everything's exposed and
Yeah, that's right. Every time I go to show the house, and then they have a lot of you put on the outlets for to smell.
Yes,
right?
the odorizers that plug in, and you just want one in every room. You need one for the whole house and one in every room. That is a red flag.
Yeah.
Usually it just means there's a dog or there's a smoker, but still you don't want to move in and then discover that later.
Yes. Yeah, there was one house I know. I was reading about this. They had to rip off the hall because they had multiple cats, and the cat pee. Yeah. Goes to the subflooring. It's very difficult to remove that odor, so it's almost impossible. So they had to cut the entire drywall 6-8 inches off the floor and then replace the portion of the drywall plus paint plus bleach plus whatever.
I had a house like this 2 years ago. Brand new carpeting, brand new sub padding, and still a smell of cats everywhere. We had to rip out everything, put kills on the bottom, and put back the new carpeting and new padding on top of it.
They just the most difficult to get rid of probably after skunk, I guess.
And rodent too.
Yeah.
Anything that you think would be important for, let's say you want to put your house on the market, and then do you think they should do an inspection prior?
A pre-listing inspection. Pre-listing inspection, yes. I would say that is important because if you have a buyer come in and you start the process with them and then they decide to get their home inspection, maybe a week or two has gone by, the home inspection comes out, maybe 3 weeks before they figure out, they don't want the house because of whatever the home inspector has found. you have a home inspection beforehand. Now the buyer may have their own inspection afterwards as well, but having that inspection on the table when the buyer walked in the door and they're fully knowledgeable about what's going on, they can decide at that point if there's too much here or if this is tolerable. We'll still get our own inspection, but it looks like it's okay right now. It could save you a lot of time, which time is money, and so yes, that is very important.
We could help also fixing stuff prior.
That's right, and I would offer whenever I do a pre-listing inspection, if they get repairs done, I will go back to the house, I'll relook at it, I'll put the corrections on the report, or add a supplementary report so they can see what was wrong and what was fixed. Yep, that helps a lot too.
Okay. Maybe getting more money for the house,
sure.
Because you don't have any problems with it.
Yeah. Say with clear pest inspection before you list the house, it's preferred, right? So if you have clear.
All right. New build is a big. I know a big construction items, and then just don't. Usually, they don't like when we bring our own inspectors.
No, they do not.
Because they do have their own team of experts or team of like warranty people or like final checklist they do,
Right.
and then just don't like when we bring the. What do you think is that?
Yeah, they don't like us there. But a lot, there are some inspectors. There's a lot of great inspectors out there, okay. But there are some inspectors that would, go through a house like that and just be so nitpicky and just pulling every little tiny crack out. And so I know that's why they don't like you. They don't like us there. I have done many new construction inspections, and I do come across. It's not always a lot of things, but there's some things they won't line the gutters up properly, so the gutters are holding water. There'll be drainage issues that the builder's not thinking about, especially if it's just one custom home versus a tract of homes. Usually for a tract of homes, they have it nailed down pretty good, but when you have a custom build, there's so many things that you could come across that a guy, they're just building the house, one house in the little, wherever he's building it. That he may cut some corners, there's a lot there, and so yes.
Or just forget stuff, right? It could be.
They didn't quite finish. They were gonna do something, didn't finish. I did an inspection. It was up in Grass Valley, and they had they never put the secondary drain line from the AC. The furnace was in the attic. The air handler for the furnace is inside the AC. They didn't run a secondary line. I couldn't find it, so they kept arguing. No, it was there. You're just not seeing it. So I just went up in the attic and dumped a gallon of water in the tray, and went outside, and it started pouring down through the eave, and I took a video of it and showed it to the agent. They had to go out and redo it. So yeah, there's little things like that for sure.
I had a new construction custom built a couple of years ago, and then my buyer didn't want to do inspection. We closed, and then later he found out there was no insulation in the attic. So they passed, and then they did call the builder. He came back to install, but builder could be not reachable anymore, right?
Right. And what if you don't notice it till a year or two later? Now you've paid all those bills.
Yeah.
You weren't that efficient. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, in Sacramento, it's warm enough throughout the entire year, so you might not see it. It might not be too cold, but if you're like in a region up north, like further north, or in a like Tahoe area, for example,
Right.
if you don't have any insulation, it can run up quite a bit. So. Any funny story you have? Any anything you can share, like in the last 15 years of you've been doing this? It's like any nuggets?
I'll say, the most interesting one, I did a home inspection. It was a house that was previously being used as elderly, convalescent kind of a home. They had older people living there. It was vacant at the time. It was big. It was a crawl space. So I got into the crawl space.
Dead bodies.
Huh?
Dead bodies.
The pest inspector, the pest inspector came after me. I got this strange phone call from the agent, and they said, "Tony, what did you see under the house? Did you find anything?" And I was like, "No, everything looked okay." Well, the pest inspector had gone under. They found human remains under the house.
Really?
Yeah, it was in Folsom, and there was police involved. They were coming to the house, and and no one ever called me, thankfully. But I didn't see it. But yeah, I was crawling around under there with human remains. I didn't see him.
That's a wonder. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, my wife had to make me take a shower after that, even though it was days later. She still let me wash off.
But I can probably imagine you have seen a lot of Mickey Mouse work,
Oh,
electrical,
yes,
plumbing,
yes.
whatever. Right? So
Yeah. I have a lot of resources that I call for different things, but one, for all my plumbing, I call my dad. He's a retired plumber, and he just gets so angry when I show him things I'm not sure about. No, they ran it the wrong way. It needs to, so yes, that's, you see it all the time. It's mostly, it's always best. If you're going to get some work done, if you don't know what you're doing, don't go to YouTube and watch the video and think you're a plumber. You should get somebody that knows what they're doing. It's
right.
In the long run, it's so much better.
Yeah, save a lot of money down the road. So
Yeah.
if anything breaks, plumbing, especially in the line inside the wall, much more trouble there.
So for a house, like maybe a 2,000 square foot homes, what would you recommend to do, right? Like usually it's home inspection, depending on the age, what would you recommend to do? Let's say it's a 15-year-old home in a tract places with a lot of other house around it, what would you recommend homeowner to do?
As far as
Home inspection itself.
well,
If it's a standard home. Like
a standard home.
Mhm.
I mean, I have to go through it and see, what I find as far as recommending for further inspections that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on what I come across in the house. I mean, I'm gonna spend a couple hours there. Pests, as we talked about, is something that usually you'll come across, especially if it's a little bit of an older home. If it's a crawl space, I always recommend having a pest inspector go through because they're looking for things that I'm not looking for, and vice versa. So, but in general, it just you have to get there and see it, do the inspection, and then you'll be able to.
So what about the PEX plumbing? PEX plumbing, yeah?
No, Kitec.
Kitec, yeah.
Kitec. Yeah, Kitec came out, I believe it was 1997 to 2008, I believe. It's certain plumbing that they ran it through a lot of higher end homes too. A lot of homes up in El Dorado Hills. You find it in Folsom, and it was sort of the beginnings of when they started using plastic piping. They're using it all now in all the new construction. Custom homes, I think, stick to the copper mostly, but for your supply lines, they use PEX now. But before PEX, it was Kitec. And so with the Kitec, the fittings, although now they're saying some of the lines themselves are breaking, but initially the fittings, there's a combination, I believe it's zinc and copper or something, didn't mix well together.
Too much zinc, I think.
Yeah, it just corroded it, and they would just burst. It would be similar to just putting a hose into your attic and turning it on full blast.
Or it could be anywhere in the house, actually.
Could be anywhere in the house.
So it's just a matter of not if it's going to break, it's when it's going to break, usually the Kitec.
Potentially, yeah. But it seems like there's bad batches, so you'll see them in certain areas, but you won't see it so much in other areas. But it very well could at any time. And I've had home inspections where they have negotiated to redo all the plumbing in the house. It was another one. It was $15,000 they had credit, and they went through and took all the Kitec out and put in the PEX.
Most of my, when I represent my buyer, we ask for the credit, redo the
Yes.
So, I mean, like you said, Mathieu, so it's not if, it's a matter of when will break. Yeah.
And I think you do have also a company that just specialize in repiping home with Kitec plumbing.
Sure.
Yeah, that's all they do. Website, that's all they do. Just repiping Kitec plumbing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it just ran anywhere between like 10 to 15 grand just to repipe an entire house.
Depending.
Depending how big it is, and then
And how easy, because sometimes they will leave the old, pipes inside the wall and then they run the new ones.
Right.
Yeah.
The other thing common we find older homes, especially in the greater Sacramento area, is the Zinsco electrical panels. That's another one that people come across, and the Zinsco panels, they've had issues where there'll be scorching happening behind the breakers, which you don't even see. They can end up welding the breakers themselves to the bus bar, rendering the breakers inoperable, and they cause house fires. It's pretty rare, but it has happened. And you can look up Zinsco, you could see the scorched panels. It's pretty scary to think that could be your house. If I see the Zinsco, I just automatically call it out that it should be safety checked by an electrician. But I do poke around a little bit, see what I can find. I don't remove the breakers, which that's not part of the general home inspection. But my recommendation at that point would just have an electrician go in, because he can do that.
But you do remove the front cover.
Of course,
Yeah.
check out the front cover, take all. Be able to see the wiring behind the front cover. Of course, that's important.
To make sure it's wired properly, labeled.
Oh,
properly.
yeah. You get double tapping, scorching, wrong wire sizes, too much insulation trimmed off, just wires just sitting in there. And animals, you get mice, rodents get in there and die. Bees are making nests in there. That's all things that you're looking behind those panels. Yeah, they can be fun.
Very good.
Well, yeah, thank you for coming, Tony. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Easy discussion, right? 25 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And well, let's end up the discussion here today. And just thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
See you next week, guys.
All right.